Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, and it is January 16th, YC127, and this is the Eve Universe Show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How's it going, guys? I am kind of chilling here. I don't know if I can show you, but like here, you can see in the corner there, this is the cone of shame. My puppy just got spayed yesterday. So they called me 2 days ago and was like, "Hey, can we move it up a week?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I didn't get nearly as much done as I'd wanted to yesterday, and I got very little sleep last night. But I wasn't able to stream on Tuesday, and we have stuff to talk about. So I wanted to at least come live and do a stream. I'm a little bit less energetic than I normally am, and I'm also using my headset mic. So I hope this is going to be good enough quality for everybody. But I do want to talk a little bit about the news because there has been a lot of angst and consternation recently. Hold on, let me get the puppy meds out of the way. And I want to kind of put some of the changes and stuff that's happening into context for my fellow Empyreans. Sweet, great. And so that's what we're going to do today. I was also going to show off some of my fleets for Eve Galaxy Conquest, but I may just save that for tomorrow since the puppy wants to sit in my lap and everything, and I don't want to try to like fiddle with too many things while I'm doing that. But so tomorrow we'll probably look into all of the different fleets that I'm using in Eve Galaxy Conquest and why, as well as an update and kind of see how things are going in Season 2. Today, and also tomorrow, we will do the weapons in New Eden, weapons in Eve training, most likely. So stay tuned for that. But today, we're going to talk about the patch and why people are mad. Because people are mad for a lot of things that involve being red. So Pochven, the prices of Morphite, etc., etc. We've got a lot of things we've got a couple of things to look at with a lot of angles and some data to kind of see what's true and what's not. But let's go ahead and jump right into it and try to understand what happened today in Pochven. Now, before we jump too far into this Pochven stuff, we will say that there has been a lot of changes happening in Pochven, mostly thanks to, from my understanding, mostly thanks to Drake Idion, who is now on the CSM. But even prior to the CSM, he was advocating for these changes. And a lot of change came to Pochven in the Revenant expansion. In fact, I have somewhere here, I think, I have the Revenant expansion patch notes, maybe not. But there was a big change in how the observatory flashpoints work. And that is being iterated on again. I think this is actually their third iteration. Ironically enough, I saw on forums or on Reddit, somebody was complaining. It's like, oh man, I wish CCP would stop just changing things so fast and let things settle and work out. And I'm like, wow, that is the opposite of what we would have heard like in 2018, right? Like we used to say that CCP never iterates on anything, whatever. So CCP is iterating on things, and for better or worse, we'll look at it. Annoyed would be the word on my end. Could be a business opportunity for the Morphite trade. Yes. And as you can see here, the market for Morphite is in fact going up. I want to do the patch notes first, though, before we talk too much about Morphite. So hold on. I only have one hand right now, so everything's a little bit slower than I'd like it to be. Boom. Okay. So, patch notes for today. This has actually been a pretty quiet week or 2 weeks or month for EVE Online. Mostly what we would expect normally. We have had events in the past in January, but it's always been stuff that was like kind of planned ahead of time. We haven't seen much of anything this month, which kind of makes sense given the fact that, they were on Christmas vacation last month. So, what time did they have to get anything done? But But today we see our first significant update of the year, I think. And it's mostly an iteration on Pochven Observatory Flashpoints. So before we begin, Observatory Flashpoints are the Dreadnought site that is available in Pochven and in Edencom Minor Victories. This is focused almost exclusive. I think this is only on the Pochven side of things. Now, this is a major source of income in Pochven and just in general. The sites have a huge payout, a 15-man fleet, and often is done by a group of like marauders, even multi-box marauders. There's been a long history with these sites. These are the same sites that used to get sea gold and all that kind of stuff. So these are always, whenever we're talking about Pochven and income, we're almost always talking about these observatory flashpoints. All right, just to make sure, just in case you weren't aware or whatever. One of the last changes that they recently did to observatory flashpoints was actually they added in the agency the ability to find these sites wherever you are in Pochven via the agency. You like the removal of warp speed in Trig Minor Victories? I mean, I'm conflicted about that change. All right. So the following changes aim to counteract the efficiency of overfilling a site by adding a net loss when more than 15 characters are present. The payouts for the sites have been adjusted to offset the additional setup time and risk. Assault vectors gates now require the use of observatory resonance keys. Each character will need their own key to unlock the gate. A key is consumed on use. Keys can be bought via NPC sell orders within Pochven stations for 30 million ISK each. 15 keys will drop as loot from the Concord Stellar Observatories. Note, spare keys do not get sold to NPCs. There are not like NPC buy orders for these keys. However, they can be sold and traded to other characters on the standard using the standard methods. Gates will become unlocked for all characters 60 seconds after the site is completed. Also, payouts have been adjusted. The total optimal payout for the site has been increased to 3.3 billion ISK from 3 billion ISK, so 10% increase. Stellar surveillance data will now make up 30% of the optional reward, down from 40%. Stellar surveillance data now belongs to the new Edencom data item group, greatly increases the number of NPC buy orders for stellar surveillance data, and threshold posts will now have significantly larger cooldown between target switches. Threshold posts will now always attack the same target as each other. So what we're seeing, I'm not 100% sure. The threshold post is the post that's designed to kill people who are kiting way far out. You get too far away from the center of the site, then the threshold posts will start shooting you. This is, yeah. So what we're seeing here is a fairly significant change where every single person that needs to go into these sites requires one of these keys, and the key is 30 million ISK. And let me tell you, people are mad about this. People are pretty mad. Oh shoot, this isn't oh well. And by and large, what I'm seeing is people that are talking about like the guys who are trying to interfere with these guys running the sites. What this does in practice is a couple of things. One, doing the site with anything more than 15 people is now a cost of 30 million ISK each, right? Because if you spend 17 keys and you only get 15 keys back, then you're theoretically going to have to replace those 2 keys one way or another, right? So if you're trying to overload the site, which is apparently one of the big concerns that has been happening, is people just kind of overloading the site. There's so much ISK in play that you can bring in 20 or 30 people and just kind of blob the site. They can like tune the reward based on that, but I think that some of that, especially with like the fact that it drops loot, not just a payout, might complicate that. So instead, they're adding this initial cost in order to be able to get in. Now, there's another patch note, by the way. If we go a little bit deeper, we're going to skip ahead. and see that all acceleration gates which consume a key per character activating it have been improved. This is actually a good change and a big one, especially for event runners. When a key is consumed, the gate will remain unlocked for that character for the duration of the site. Note, this persists when a character leaves the location or logs out, but resets after a downtime. No keys will be consumed when activating a gate already unlocked for that character. So this does a couple of things. One, this means that if you get pushed off of the observatory flashpoint, but then rally and come back, you do not have to pay a key to get back in. So we can't just like try to push somebody out in order to troll them or something like that, because they can always just come back in. If the invader that comes into the site doesn't finish the site and doesn't kill anybody, then the people who have already paid their entry fee will be able to get back in. Now, interestingly enough, this means that the people who interfered with the site can also get back in once the payment has been made, right? Once everybody's paid their ticket in, everybody can come and go as they please until that site is completed. And then once the site is completed, 60 seconds later, the gate completely unlocks, and then the next site spawns. Yes, this fixes Crimson Harvest sites too. Thank you, Malik. That's exactly correct. This fixes so Crimson Harvest, Winter Nexus, and any other site that involves keys, right? There's a problem, which is this has happened on many, many occasions. There's always been this kind of confusion because people will be like, oh, it consumed an entire stack of keys. The problem is that before this changed, when you activated a gate that required a key, it consumed a key regardless of what was going on. It doesn't matter if the gate was locked and you couldn't use it. It doesn't matter if you already had activated it and just hadn't entered warp yet. So what this means is that if you were just spamming activate on the gate, hey, Roughnecks, I'm interested to hear what you have to say about this too. If you were spamming activate on the key, you could actually wipe out your entire stack of keys in a single go, because every single time you try to activate it, it would do a key again. Or if you like try to activate it and then the rat came in at the last second and scrammed you and it shut off your warp, and then you tried to get back in, you need another key to activate it. So this rule is just a general improvement to the way that gates with keys work, which is great because chances are they're going to keep using keys on things, and it was going to just be a problem that keeps cropping up. And I think that this fix is absolutely necessary with the change that they're doing with Pochven, but it is a change that benefits a lot of different stuff when it comes to especially event sites, like I said. Now, one of the things that I think is really funny is a lot of the people that are talking about this are like, oh my God, now I have to spend 450 million ISK for even the chance to do PvP. And I feel like that's kind of telling on yourself a little bit. Yet, yes, you do need 15 people to go into the site. But if the site and you are allied with each other, like wait, let me think about this. No, because it's an Edencom Dread site on the inside, right? So the natives aren't going to be friendly per se with the locals in there. So it's not like the person who's disturbing it is necessarily going to be friendly with Edencom. Although that being said, a lot of the people in Pochven already have dual standing, so if they just go in there and start messing with people, they can probably... My point is that the site is already fairly demanding, and so you shouldn't require even numbers in order to disrupt an enemy's operation, unless you are planning on stealing it. In which case, this offers an opportunity to contest it, right? Both teams put in their 15 tickets, and whoever wins gets 15 back, right? But like, I would assume that you would not need a full fleet of 15 people if you're just sitting there. If all you're doing is PvPing, you don't need actually 15 people to go take them out while they're in the site. They already have a fucking dreadnought hitting them, you know? But even beyond that, one of the issues is that all of this consternation about the need for tickets in order to, or the need for keys in order to do the PvP assumes that you're never going to catch these ships out of position, right? You're telling me that you can never catch a fleet of 10 Marauders or 15 Marauders on a gate as they're traveling between systems, because they have to travel between systems. It's not like these things. This isn't nullsec, fellas. You can't just wait 2 minutes for the site to respawn in the same system and run it again. You know, you actually have to move around, and when you move around, you could get hit, right? The vast majority of people that get disrupted in these kinds of things aren't happening inside of the actual fight. They're happening outside of the fight, and all of that is perfectly still available, right? Now, another piece of what got people mad is that because of this, the payout has been adjusted. 3.3 billion ISK instead of 3 billion ISK. However, there's two changes. There's two things that offsets this. One, a big portion of the payout was moved from cash to stellar surveillance data. And as you can see, the amount of stellar surveillance data has now gone down, while the payout has gone up, which means that the stellar surveillance data, the amount of stellar surveillance data that you get per site, has gone down slightly, or at least stayed even, but I'm pretty sure it gone down slightly. This extra value, like it's 300 million ISK, when it costs 450 million ISK in keys to activate it. Now, that also means that you get an extra 450 million ISK worth of keys. And some people might say, well, you can't sell those keys to NPC buy orders, but that's not the point. People are, you know, if you're still running these sites, you're going to need a key for next time. If you get a key now, you don't need that key next time. So it's still a change in the cost of your operations, right? If I do a $300,000 tax write-off versus the government just handing me a $300,000 check, in the end, that's effectively the same thing. A $300,000 tax write-off is the same as giving me $300,000 at a certain point when it comes to the economics of it, right? So in the same way, getting 450 million ISK worth of keys is still getting 450 million ISK worth of keys, because if you didn't get those keys, you'd still have to spend that 450 million ISK in order to replace those keys in order to do the site again. And even if you're not going to do the site again, other people are going to need to do the site again. And so you could sell it to them in theory, making that 30 million ISK an ISK floor, or the floor to the cost of those keys if other people are selling it, right? Or rather the ceiling of the cost. When the reward increased if you drop the fleet of 15 to 14 members instead site in Pochven? Well, no, because the optimal payout is 3.3 billion ISK. So I don't know, like there's probably a number that you could do the site in which you're losing value. But chances are you might as well just assume that 3.3 billion ISK is being split evenly between everybody. It may, I think it goes down in efficiency if you go above 15, but below 15 doesn't make it better than 3.3 billion. It just means that each person is getting more. Now, you're not spending as many keys, and that's another big key here, right? Like, these keys are being spawned. So any group that uses less than 15 people will, in the end, spawn additional keys than what they needed in order to do it, right? In addition to that, I mean, if you have a spy, or if you have some way to know when they're getting close to finishing the site, you can actually just come in at the end of the site with fewer people and steal the loot, including the keys, right? A bit risky, yeah, a bit risky, but thanks for the clarification. Yeah, totally. So the thing is that this increase in payment isn't that big of an increase in payment, considering the fact that they are not increasing, or rather probably reducing, the stellar surveillance data a little bit within the site to compensate for it. And of course, the cost of keys. But more importantly, there is a cost to the additional logistics that are required to make sure that you have enough keys and get the correct keys to the correct people. Obviously, like, a multi-boxer may not necessarily think of it in the same way as like a fleet of real people, but the god honest truth is that there is an additional fiddling with things. And those keys could, like, if you get killed, you have a 50-50 chance of dropping those keys, right? So if you got a group that's going to run 6 sites and you have a bunch of extra keys, I guess you might not want extra keys because you could just get the keys from the previous one to use on the next one in the sites. But the point is that if you kill a group at any given time, chances are, unless you're doing it in the middle of the fight, they will have their keys on them. So you could kill them and steal their keys in order to get your own keys. But so there's additional, but the point is that there's additional fiddly bits in order to organize, to make sure everybody has their keys and make sure everybody's ready to go and do their stuff correctly. And so there's a slight increase in cost because of that. However, we have seen a lot of people freaking out because it's like, oh my God, this is going to be such a runaway thing in Pochven. I wanted to look at what that meant, what it meant for there to be a runaway value in Pochven. And just to put this into proportion, into perspective, we can see that in October of last year, the Triglavian invasion payout was 20 trillion ISK per month, okay? The month before that, September, same thing, actually. We see that we have more than that. Triglavian invasions at 22.4 trillion ISK per month from Triglavian invasion sites, right? Well, during Havoc, right? What is the last thing that just happened? We're in Havoc, right? This is Havoc. Isn't it? Oh no, Revenant. It's not Havoc. I'm off by a year. Salvager would have to be able to take aggro too, so they're all Marauders. The Salvager can, so the reason why the site unlocks 60 seconds after the site is finished is so that way the Salvagers can come in for free. So the Salvagers get in for free. Unless they're in during the time of the fight. Anyway, so we have about 20 to 22 trillion ISK per month during that time period. But if we look at the December monthly economic report, we'll get to ore in a minute. All right, I'm doing this with my left hand right now because my dog is sitting on my right hand. If we look at December's monthly economic report, which is the month after the Pochven change, well, 2 months, I think, before or after the Pochven changes that recently happened, we see that the Triglavian invasion payout. Wait, no, that's December 2023. My bad. Triglavian invasion payouts at 17.2 trillion back then. Sorry, my bad. Wrong one. Hold on. December 2024. Here we go. Sorry, I was researching multiple things. We're going to be talking about ore and stuff in a little bit. So, like the stream, I'm trying hard. If we come over here to Triglavian invasions, first of all, we see that Triglavian invasions has fallen below Sancha incursions, but Triglavian invasions is 6.2 trillion. 6.2 trillion from 22 to 6. Now, a chunk of that was moved to stellar data, right? So let's assume, well, actually, we can pretty much figure it out because it was 40%, right? So we could say that the grand total of it was 10 trillion ISK, with 40% of it going to Triglavian survey data and 6.2 trillion of it as payouts. So that means that the changes that were implemented in Havoc, or the changes that were made in Retribution, cut the Pochven ISK farming in half. So a 10% increase in payouts without making it necessarily easier to do. Like, there's a lot of wiggle room between 10 trillion and 22 trillion, right? They can add a little bit more faucet to there without bringing it back to being as bad as it was before, right? So let's keep that in mind, that when we talk about, oh, they made Pochven sites more expensive, that's after they cut the amount of value that was being pulled out of Pochven from these sites in half. All right. The other thing that's worth noting, and this is something that like, well, you're talking about the payouts though. In order to max payout, you need 15 people. Everyone gets less with 14. It's like home fronts. Oh, is it? Yeah. I don't remember. Like I said, I don't remember if there is a minimum threshold to get full payout. Malik, maybe Roughnecks or Drake can come in and correct me. Yeah. I get you. I understand that you're responding to him. I'm trying to like I'm chiming in. Yeah, 14 has the same payout for 15. So it's not quite like home fronts. Oh, under 14 it becomes worse. Okay. Thank you. Flea Harvey is Drake Idion, by the way, so who is the CSM member who has been extremely active in making these changes happen. So I appreciate that clarification, man. So yeah, the thing is that there's plenty of room for them to add a little bit of additional value to make this worthwhile again. Yeah, you get less until 14 or 15, and then after that it drops also. Yeah, exactly. So where was I? Oh yeah. Here's the thing. And this was the same thing that happened when they were doing like the gate lockouts in LowSec, when they introduced the sites that lock out when you have 3 ships in them. And there's been other examples of this in the past where they've added mechanisms of safety in sites that are in dangerous areas. And every single time we get people having this knee-jerk reaction that, oh my God, you're making them safer. That's bad because we're trying to hunt and kill them. But generally speaking, it turns out the other way around. Because here's the thing. If people analyze the situation and deem it not worth it to them, then they're not going to do it, right? So by giving people the tools of safety while running the site, you're going to encourage more people to try doing the site, right? So if people feel like they are able to run the site with a bit more safety, then they're more likely to be running the sites. You're going to get more people in Pochven moving around trying to do the sites, more likely to be able to catch them outside of the site and kill them. So making the running of the site itself safer does not necessarily reduce PvP opportunities. In fact, it often promotes PvP activities because, as CSSU points out, it promotes a false sense of security, which makes people attempt it with more expensive stuff, right? They feel like, oh, if I can just get inside, then I'll be fine. Mining seems to be in that state now. The sites are by default there on the probe scanner. Even the new SOV escalations don't have to be scanned down. Just not much safety. Yeah, actually, scanning down sites is a really good example of that, where like if you make a site require to be scanned down, that actually offers a bit of safety. Now, granted, anyone could have a probe launcher, but most people don't. And you can pay attention on D-scan to know when someone is scanning something down. So that's another good example of when they make something safer, they protect it a little bit, but that just encourages people to do it. It doesn't prevent somebody who's dedicated from making that situation dangerous. But yeah, a lot of this trying to think if that's all I want to say about this particular piece of the topic, and I think it is. You know, we're now the big thing is that we're going to pay attention. This is like the 3rd major update to observatory flashpoints in as many months. Historically, CCP has been really bad at continually iterating on something. This, in my opinion, this shows a significant improvement in their commitment to doing these kinds of things. Some people are complaining about that, want things to settle, but it's like, when it comes to PvE sort of stuff, it's easy to make a change and then see the impact and then want to tweak it further. And so I think it's actually good that they are A, making changes, and B, iterating on those changes, admitting, like basically they're not married to any given change. There's already been several changes that have been made to try to make the Pochven better that have been walked back as they've been trying to commit towards a good, really good solution to making Pochven an interesting place to operate, right? And this isn't necessarily going to be the silver bullet. Neither was the changes that was put out in Revenant, but it is part of a process of getting it right. In order to balance things, one must adapt to said changes. Right. That is true. Rescan the site so I can just jump on anybody without giving the game away. PL, that is exactly correct. Man, it is my nightmare every single time I go exploring. All right. Okay, to help make Pochven more accessible, the minimum standings requirements for certain actions have been reduced. Fitting and repair requirements have been reduced to negative 0.05 from 1 and 2. So it used to be that negative 0.05 was what was required to dock. So if you had any negative standings with Triglavians, you couldn't dock, but as long as you were at least neutral with them, then you could dock, but you couldn't fit or do repairs. Now, the problem with these two things is that, like, you could still get around this by having just one of your guys have the correct standings. There are many cases where I'd go to Pochven with other people and we would all dock up, but because they haven't gotten any standings with like we're on a dual standings fleet or something like that, we dock up. People have had like minor ticks with Triglavians, so they're positive enough to be able to dock up, but they're not positive enough to repair. So now everybody has to hand me their ships, and I have to repair each one of them and then hand them all back. Or, if we're going to refit, okay, we're going to, put probe launchers on them or something like that. Like, everybody has to dock up, and then I have to refit. We actually just had this happen with our mining fleet, because we jumped in there with cloaks on and then wanted to switch out of the cloaks once we were in there and established that this was the site that we were going to live in, or that we were going to do it in. We would dock up and everybody would swap out of their cloak and into their mining setup. But all the people that couldn't refit had to hand me their ship, and I would refit it and then give it back to them. So, it wasn't like that that standings requirement for fitting and repair was actually doing much. It was just making things more fiddly, right? Manufacturing and corporation office requirements have been reduced to 3.0 from 4.0. Home system Stargate requirements have been reduced to 6 from 7. I'm less married to those because it's like, okay, well, you only have to grind this much instead of this much. Who cares? Standings will no longer be gained or lost when destroying either type of Edencom Gunstar. Which, I mean, it's a multiple of 3. Lower friendly. Okay. All right. I'll buy that. Multiples of 3. Fair enough. You know what? Fair enough. Fair enough. I officially like it now. It's that easy. So recently they made a change that made it so that Triglavian war posts did not change your standings. And that made me really annoyed because they keep making these changes that make it so that war posts are less, not in Triglavian minor victories on gates anymore. They don't require standings hits, so people will clear them away more efficiently. But they never made these changes to Edencom. But here we go. They did it. The standings will no longer be gained or lost when destroying either type of Edencom Gunstar. This is both good and bad. First of all, if you want to keep your Edencom standings up and yet farm Edencom Gunstars, congratulations, you can now clear off Edencom Gunstars without losing Edencom standings, if that's your thing. But what this also does is it gets rid of an easy way that players had to gain Triglavian standings. When we were originally trying to get our Triglavian standings up when Pochven first reformed, we would kill a Gunstar every 10 minutes. So yeah. So Edencom Gunstars are now going to be able to be destroyed without having any standings loss. Also, the stellar observation posts in stellar observatory structures, which are the the doodads inside of like Edencom minor victory systems, those also will no longer lose standings. So you'll only be losing standings when you're killing the rats themselves. Now, furthermore, last month's change to DAW's Liminality Locust negatively impacted some playstyles in unintended ways, and as such has been softened significantly. The change also incentivized removing system effects, which have made Pochven feel unique, so now have been split off from the structure. Okay. Allow me to explain. So in the lore, in theory, all of this stellar manipulation from these stellar observatories and stellar transmitters are what's causing the stellar effect, like the different weather effects within those systems, right? In Edencom minor victories and fortresses, you have bonuses. Wait a minute. Now that I think about it, this doesn't include. Wait, this doesn't include Edencom ones, right? This doesn't include Edencom ones, right? This is just Pochven ones. Correct me if I'm wrong. And this is only Pochven ones, so I'll explain it as if it's only Pochven ones. But so in all of these different sites, or in right, but only Trig minor victories, not Edencom minor victories. Because Edencom minor victories have a bonus that's either armor or shield based on the empire that owns it, and then a bonus to that empire's E-War effect. And then the Triglavians have a remote repair bonus and cuts the amount of locks that you have possible to you in half. So you've got this bonus to remote repair, but a penalty against locked targets and a warp speed penalty for all ships within the system, right? Now, these weather effects are tied to the doodads that get put up at the stellar construction site. So either for Edencom, it is the stellar observation posts and stellar observatory structure, as well as in the trig space, it was the DAW's Liminality Locust that puts out this weather effect. What that means is that people can go in to the stellar construction sites and destroy this beacon in order to turn off the weather effect within that system. And while that is still true in Edencom systems, that is no longer true in Triglavian systems. So Triglavian systems, due to the massive stellar manipulation done by the Triglavians in those systems, the weather effect now is a permanent fixture of that system, regardless of whether or not the DAW's Liminality Locus is up or down. In addition to that, they increased the amount of the remote repair bonus to 30% from 25%. And in Triglavian minor victory systems, in Triglavian minor victory systems, they reduced the remote repair bonus to 15% from 25% and removed the warp speed penalty from Triglavian minor victory systems. So this has a lot of little small effects, where, like, first of all, it means that Triglavian minor victory systems and Pochven systems will always have this effect up, which is probably for the best. Pochven systems will still have that warp speed penalty. One of the I really actually appreciate the lock penalty within Triglavian systems, because it makes you fight more like a Triglavian. Like, you can do remote repair, but because it cuts your locks in half, it behooves you to stick into sets of like 3 or 6 people because of how many different locks you can have, right? With a Drekovec, I think you can have 2 other people and your target, your DPS target. So you can have your 2 Logi targets and your DPS target locked up. And then with like a Damovic, you can have your current rep target and your current DPS target locked up, but no more than that. So it makes it so that players have to fight a little bit more like Trig, or at least encourages players to fight a little bit more like Trig in Trig systems. But the warp speed penalty had a lot of had a lot of bad feeling effect, right? Like it was interesting. Like I think personally that the warp speed effect was something that could be worked with and added some texture to stuff. But I understand, especially since some of these Triglavian minor victory systems are pretty big. Um, that speed penalty can just become annoying instead of interesting. Um, especially for people who operate within the Triglavian minor victory systems, like I do sometimes. And so, like, if I'm going to like mine or do whatever, if I'm warping between places, it just kind of sucks to always warp a little bit slower, even though it also means that it takes longer for people to land on you. So that's gone away. But the remote repair bonus has been reduced in Triglavian minor victory systems, but increased in Pochven systems, which also means that remote repair is just 5% better in Pochven systems. And it'll be interesting to see if that impacts anybody's strategies overall, because that is only remote repair. So any sort of logistics in Pochven, and that includes the the observatory flashpoints, by the way. And again, this can no longer be taken down. What can be taken down is the decloaking pulse. So the big thing that happened was when they came out with the observatories. So back in the day, one of the things that people complained about a lot was AFK cloaking, right? People would AFK cloak in enemy systems. They would just go into an enemy system and cloak up and then like go to work, right? And they would just leave themselves cloaked up in the system all day. And this worked as like psychological warfare because you never know when that person is there, right? As soon as you assume that they're just AFK, then all of a sudden, oh, look, they decloak, light their cyno, and now you're dead, right? So people would often like act as if the person is always there just because they don't know whether or not they are, because they're always there in local. And so it's this bit of a psychological warfare that people would do to each other in nullsec. And this is why there was a lot of arguments to remove local from nullsec and remove AFK cloaking from nullsec, et cetera, et cetera. And then in the end, I think CCP came up with a pretty genius maneuver, which is the introduction of the observatories, which are these fairly expensive, like 100 million like sticks that you can drop down, and after 10 minutes, they start pulsing out and decloak anybody who's cloaked or has a chance of decloaking. I think it's a 50-50 chance each pulse to or maybe this says 30%, but that might be just for, I think that's just for the locust. I think the original observatories are 50-50, if I remember correctly. And when you cloak, you get a 30-minute like grace period where you cannot be decloaked through the observatory at all. So the idea is that if you are AFK, if you are legitimately AFK, then an observatory can be put down, it'll decloak you, you can be probed down and killed. But if you are actually at the keyboard, then this would be a waste of time. You could always just recloak up as soon as you get decloaked, or every 30 minutes, quickly decloak and recloak before anybody can do anything. And then Bob's your uncle. You don't have to worry about it. So this was a pretty genius solution to get rid of AFK cloaking or AFK camping while still allowing cloaking camping to be a thing. But one of the big pieces to all of this was that people did not want this in wormhole space, right? Cloaking in wormhole space and stalking and hunting in wormhole space, big deal. The idea that observatory could just like you could clear your wormhole by putting up an observatory and waiting a few pings and checking to see if anybody pops out. Like that kind of goes into the face of what wormholes are all about. And so observatories were unable to be anchored in wormhole space. And Pochven operates a lot like wormhole space. So it was decided that Pochven 2 do not allow observatories. And for a long time, it was like that. But over time, the issue became not AFK cloaking, because with a delayed local, like a wormhole local in Pochven, it doesn't matter if someone's AFK cloaking. You're not going to see them anyways. So there's no psychological warfare to do. But what did happen was you start to see all of these CCTVs where people would put up a character, cloak it, and then stream that ship or that camera nonstop. And so then people can go and look at those streams, like Uedama Scout is a famous one for in Uedama that does this. But doing it in Pochven at a certain point started to make it too easy to move around in Pochven. And as I pointed out earlier at the beginning of this conversation, there is a minor goal to make people feel at least relatively safe inside of the sites themselves. But the act of moving between sites needs to be dangerous. So if those guys can use CCTV to clear every single jump without a scout, then it becomes far too trivial to move around safely in Pochven. So to correct that, they added to the DAW's liminality locus this decloaking pulse, just like an observatory, that was 6 minutes and had a 30% chance of decloaking, right? As a way of like helping eliminate those CCTVs. But the problem with that is that it apparently started to impact other people that had more legitimate reasons to be cloaked for more than 30 minutes. So this change is a compromise to that. Now, the decloaking pulse is every 60 minutes. So this is really designed to just get somebody who's just AFK, right? Anybody who is even the least bit paying attention to their shit can just cloak and recloak every 30 minutes or so, 60 minutes or so, and get that cloaking timer at the right time to not be able to get it. And even then, it's only, well, now it's a 60% chance, because if it was 30% chance, 30% chance means that it takes at least 3 or 4 pulses for it to happen on a consistent basis. Now, with it 60% makes it 2 or 3 pulses to make it on a consistent basis. That still means that it'll take 2 hours before somebody is decloaked, more likely than not. But more importantly, this feature is now exclusively what is on the DAW's liminality locust, right? So this thing that's in the construction zone that can be destroyed, now destroying it does not remove the remote repair bonus, does not remove the warp speed penalty in systems that have the warp speed penalty, but does remove the decloaking pulse. So now the decloaking pulse only happens to people who have been cloaked for more than 30 minutes, every 60 minutes, and only 60% of the time, and only when the DAW's liminality locust is actually constructed. So this is very much a other side of the spectrum of impact, right? How do we create the least amount of impact while still targeting the thing that we're trying to disrupt, which is those CCTVs that operate for hours and hours and hours and provide safety in Pochven. Did I get all that right, Drake? Does that all sound reasonable? Did I nail it? More or less, yeah. Do you want to? I forgot. Did you want to hop on comms, or is this good for you? Basically, it fucked over bomber hunters. Okay, you'll stay off. Because I get you. Because bomber, so people would sit around in a squad of, yeah, that makes sense. People sit around in a squad of bombers to hunt the marauders. But because they have to sit around and wait for a while, the decloaking was getting in their way. Is that what you mean? Got it. Yeah, we don't want the hunters to be put out of place. So yeah, again, the biggest thing here, the big takeaway here is that they are actively and aggressively iterating on Pochven to make this make sense. Now, that is a good thing. However, I will continue to beat this drum and say that the biggest problem with Pochven, now, we may already be past the Rubicon when it comes to this, but the biggest problem with these sites in Pochven is that they are backwards. The Edencom Dreadnought site should be an Edencom Minor Victories and Edencom Minor Victories and Fortresses, where the Triglavian Dread should be in Pochven. So that way, pro Edencom people have to go into Pochven to run the sites, and pro Triglavian people have to leave Pochven to raid Eden Calm minor victories and fortresses in order to run the site. And that change, like almost every single bit of the drama and the consternation and the what iteration that's been required on making these sites work has been because, in my opinion, it has been because these sites are backwards. But as long as you're going to do it this way, as long as you're going to insist on doing it this way, then I think that these improvements are likely going to help continue to dial in as good as possible. I still would like to see more rewards be provided to things outside of the observatory flashpoint, to the smaller sites. But I personally think that a lot of this is happening because the fall off from 20 or whatever, 20 to 22 billion or trillion to 6 trillion or 10, even 10 trillion, if you want to consider it that way, is such a huge fall off that CCP is trying to figure out like where there's a balance there. Cutting it in half is a huge impact. So, yeah. They'll probably want to straighten that out before they work on anything, before they work on adding more rewards to the other stuff. But I think that more rewards to the smaller sites and more smaller sites is what we really need. But that's just me. All right, well, that was the first thing in the patch notes. Exactly, TL. Yeah, I agree. Like, I really would like to live in Pochven, but I would like there to be more to do as a solo or small gang person besides just roam around and try to kill people. You can go through the rampant stuff as well. Oh, yeah. That's fair. Well, I feel like I went over a lot of the stuff. I will say that, like, I'm not just guessing out my ass for some of this stuff. We've gotten clarification as to why some of these things have been done. I think that I've kind of nailed everything that was posted in that, though. One of the concerns that was raised was that people could bait people into wasting keys. But again, I think that a lot of people's complaints about these keys get solved by that further patch note down below, which says that that site now remains unlocked for you until the site is completed, right? I think that that makes it both fair for the people that have to pay keys to try to run the site and for the people that try to pay that are trying to pay keys in order to disrupt the site, that you pay for the one time and then it's active for the whole rest of the entire site. Some of the null groups took a break and stopped farming for a while. Well, yeah. I mean, exactly. Again, that's kind of what that kind of reinforces what I was saying, right? Here's another way to put it. You may complain that it takes you 450 million ISK in order to try at PvP. What I say to you is, if there's nobody running the site, then there's nobody to run in on. There's no 450 million ISK. There's no PvP to try to have, right? And once again, you can still catch them anywhere outside of the sites. So we want people to be encouraged to run the sites. We want people to feel emboldened to run the sites. So that way people like Drake can kill them and steal their stuff. All right. And then also, the following changes hope to refine last November's changes to capital escalation rules. A combat site can now escalate anytime before the second wave spawns, and a combat site will only de-escalate if there's no capital within range of the second wave spawns. So if you remember, another thing that was changed was in capital escalations in wormholes, we had a thing where the capital ship so a while back, capital escalations were changed to make it so that the main escalation is that there's a drifter battleship that shows up that has a big bounty on it or a big reward on it, I should say. And that's the majority of the value of the capital escalation. Then in November, what they did was they made it so that if the site doesn't get a capital escalation, it still spawns a weaker Drifter battleship, the Drifter Recon battleship. And so this is just a tweak on that, which basically makes it more consistent. Yeah, and that's about it. So this today's patch is mostly focused on Pochven. We can go into Hobo Leaks and verify this. There's the final liminality. This is the effect beacon that now provides the effect permanently. Same with the minor victory beacon. Here's the key. And then here we can see the effects being removed from the locus and added to the effect beacons. And here we can see the attributes being changed to compensate for that. And there isn't anything else. Oh yeah, here's the there was some verbiage that was changed because some of the missions, or DED sites rather, mentioned a key, even though there wasn't a key involved in unlocking the gate. So they got rid of the verbiage for that. And then the rest of this is just the text for the changes that we know about. So nothing really big there. I will say that while we're here, I do want to point out that there is this really curious thing, the static private Jin spawn point. No idea what that's for. It is on it's on Tranquility. Sorry, this is on Singularity, but not Tranquility, according to this. And I have no idea what it's supposed to be for. So I'm just mostly pointing this out so that way I stop getting people messaging me about it. I know about it. Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk about today is mining. Mining. So people have been complaining about this. The price of Morphite has shot up quite a bit in the last couple of weeks and months. So Morphite is necessary for all Tech 2 production. You can see in industry, it's basically all Tech 2 production requires at least some Morphite, which makes it a pretty significant bottleneck for Tech 2 production. And we can see here is the last year, right? So around August, September is the bottleneck. Fair. So it's a component. There we go. It's becoming a bottleneck. That's what that slope seems to indicate. But either way, in August, starting in August, we see this trend upwards. A lot of that comes from Equinox. If we go, that is not the correct page. If we go back to opened up so many tabs. December 2024, we scroll up to the top. We can see that so we can see that this fall off in production. I don't know if that's a really good indicator. Hold on. August. Interesting. I guess May, June, July, August. So yeah, it happened at a downturn in production. I'm not sure if I can explain that, but yeah, so when Equinox happened. Now the complaint is that Equinox rocks are smaller and there are less minerals in the game than before. Now, first of all, I don't know if that's necessarily true, right? Now I wish somebody had good information about like how much minerals could be extracted. 07 Ragtag Pro, thank you. How much minerals were extracted per person or in nullsec prior to this, but we do have some charts to be able to look at, okay? Let's look at this. So we can see mining per region, asteroid ore mined per over time. And we can see that the whole thing sits at just about 2 billion. So the accusation is, oh, excuse me. Where is it? Shoot, I wish I knew which one. What happens when Mercoxic anomalies are spawns are nerfed compared to pre-equinox level? Yeah, and some people, I've been seeing this claim that there's less ore available than before. Hi, puppy. All right. So let's go ahead and look at the actual numbers. If you see here, we can see that according to this chart, here's January. So here's the year, right? This little area right here. Up here's production. I'll say I've had a harder time finding empty nullsec systems to go mining in. Might just be bad luck on my part when I yeet out. Well, does that mean you mean you're finding more people out there? Because that's not necessarily a bad thing, and it would go to the opposite of what people are saying. I used to have a saying concerning ore mining: big rocks don't go to you, you go to them. But there are just no big rocks to find. A lot of small ones. I agree that there's a lot of smaller rocks now. Like that's true, and I don't. And we've talked about this before. I don't necessarily even agree that the smaller rock thing solves the problem in any way. Like I don't like if the smaller rock thing making people interact with the client once every 2 minutes instead of once every 10 minutes doesn't do the big fix that CCP seems to think it does. I'll put it that way, right? Like the solution it does make multi-boxing more challenging, but like we're already talking about something with like a 0.5 actions per minute requirement. So, but I think it's more that people are mining less, not necessarily that there's less minerals available. But let's look into that. Let's look into that. Hold on. This is actually this is what I find fascinating. If we go down here, here is the mining level, right? And we can see that mining has gone down. Wait, hold on. Yeah. Mining has gone down, and then there's this big drop off and then this scoop up, right? But the problem is that this is the value moving the value of the prices, right? So the problem with this is that as the minerals go up in value, right? If we see this spike from September up, if we go here and we see this spike from September up, we'll see that this value increase even if the exact same amount of minerals are mined. If you just not, it's not just Morphite. It's actually, you can see here's Megasite since September, and here's Isogen since September has actually gone down because Equinox brought down the value of Isogen, where the Mexilon went up, Morphite went up, Noxium went up, Pyrite is up, Titanium is flat, Zydrine went way up, null-sec minerals have gone up, where low-sec minerals have kind of traded because Noxium has taken over, Isogen has gone down because the balance between those two requirements for construction got shifted. So low-sec got swapped, but everything that gets mined in high-sec, or sorry, null-sec, went up. And a lot of the stuff that gets mined in high-sec and moons also went up because people aren't getting the minerals out of moons anymore. So pyrite and Mexilon are explained by the moon changes, which is why you see kind of this gradual increase since Equinox introduced the Metanox moon drills in both pyrite and Mexilon, with pyrite being the bigger bottleneck. But we now also see this big change in null-sec minerals. Now, part of this could be because null-sec now can mine other things. They can choose to mine Isogen, and they can choose to mine high-sec ore, excuse me, etc. But there's also, like, mining in null-sec has kind of become a little bit more bullshit. So that could be it too. But the big takeaway here is, the thing is, almost every null system had a huge anomaly compared to now where you just have 2 or 3 per constellation. Yes, I understand. And I think that there could be some fixes that could be done, but I'm just looking at the numbers here. So we can look and we can see that, so this change is a fluctuation in the value of the mining. And we can also see here that that dip represents a big dip in null-sec mining compared to other things. In fact, oddly enough, wormholes saw a bigger increase during that time than anything else in mid-2024. But what's interesting, I find, is that if you go here and you look at asteroid ore mined over time, we see that the actual mapping is almost flat with a dip in from July to November, but now it's back up, right? And so July was about when they came out with the new equinox changes, but they were not forced in yet. November is when they improved the equinox changes and made them required. And we can see that it got suppressed a little bit, but then bounced back up. And that suppression happened a little bit in high sec, but mostly in null sec, right? So the actual M3 of ore has gone down, or went down mid-year, but now is actually back up. It's back up a little bit. It's back up to pre-changes levels. So it isn't the amount of ore that's being mined that is the problem. And, you know, people want to talk about, okay, well, pre-scarcity, or like previously, before equinox changes, okay? So let's look at, first of all, we can see that it's the same as before equinox changes now. Like the levels are pretty much the same as what it was. Well, also the production nullsec has the spike. Oh, Space Ghost! Space Ghost is starting to figure it out! Space Ghost is starting to figure out the real reason why this is all happening. All right. So, but the problem that I had with this chart is that it only goes back to January 2024, right? And a lot of crazy shit has been happening over the last few years. So if you want to suggest that there was a better time, let's go back. Now, the problem is that I can't go back that far. It turns out that this particular chart didn't exist in the MER until 2021. But we can go back to 2022, and we can see what it looked like. And this is, wait, which one is this? Yeah, that's 2021. So 2022, spoilers, you can see, okay, and this is actually really handy because if you see right here, this is when scarcity ended. So this is when they doubled the amount of minerals in the world, but added residue. That's why we have residue here now. So you can see when scarcity ended, it did go up, and it stayed up from there and then went down a little bit, right? Until August of 2022. Now, the reason why that's important is because we can go back to this. Where's 2023? Wait, did I miss 2023? Oh, hold on. Bum, bum, bum. All right. So in 2023, we see that it started out at that point from the previous year and then trended up, well, you know, flat with a little bit down, and then trended up a little bit to be at kind of an all-time high for the year, a yearly high, I guess, at the end of the year, right? And then that picks up the next year, or rather, if we keep going back in time, we see that it starts out down here. That's here, where it goes from scarcity, goes up, goes down a little bit, then comes to here, flat, and then up a little bit to here, where it's been basically flat. And then here's the crazy one. If you look at 2021, this is 2021. So you want to talk about a time in which a low amount of minerals were being mined. You want to talk about a time in which there wasn't very many minerals mined. Look at this drop off. But what's even crazier is if we look on this scale line, we see that prior to this massive drop off, which is in 2021, which is still, mind you, this is still scarcity, right? I don't have a pre-scarcity volume, unfortunately. But if we see this as being our high water mark prior to whatever the hell this was, first of all, we can see that it slowly recovers over the course of the next couple of years. But more importantly, if we look at right now's, look, 2.5 billion, and it's touching the 2.5 billion, and it's comfortably above the 2 billion mark. Where here, it wasn't even comfortably above the 2 billion mark and barely touching 2.5 billion. So we are objectively mining more M3 of ore now than prior to since 2021. So what's going on? If we're mining more than ever, but people are complaining about not being able to mine enough, and mineral prices are going up, what's the big thing? Maybe the nullsec war is what caused the big dip. It was a combination of things. A lot of it had to do, I can't remember all of the details. I think that this is actually when like the war ended. So a lot of people like took the summer off, but also like we were told at the beginning of the year that scarcity was going to end by the end of the year. So there was a lot of people that probably was just not even fucking with it until scarcity ended, which of course pissed people off because it just introduced residue. But we didn't know that at this time. But that is a huge fall off, and I'd like to look into what made that happen again, just to make sure that I know. But I want to say that it was the end of the war potentially. But either way, so the big spike, as Space Ghost alluded to, I think that the secret to the big spike is real simple. It's right here. You cannot increase production by that much and not put an additional demand on the minerals. You're telling me that you're going to increase production by 1 trillion, and that's not going to have any impact? You're going to increase production by nearly by 20%, a 20% increase in production, and a what, 10% increase in mining? Maybe. No. There is an amazing amount of production going on right now, and the mining has remained flat. And that makes right now a great time to be a miner. That's just what it is. That's just what it is, guys. So when people are complaining about all this stuff, realize, most importantly, this is not for CCP to fix. That's the big argument here, okay? I'm not saying whether or not this is a good thing, this is a bad thing, this is a whatever thing. This is a market thing. This is EVE Online, where things happening and players making choices have impact on the game. Players make choices based on events that are happening and things that are occurring and changes that are made, which causes players to shift their choices as a block, which makes movements happen within the market. And that's all we're seeing. We are seeing a sandbox market game play out as it iterates, as major changes to the establishment happens in multiple regions of the space. The invisible hand of the market will fix it or completely derail it out of control. This is what the market looks like, guys. That's it. You don't want CCP to fix your problems. Nullsec. You don't want CCP. If Nullsec isn't having enough wars, that's Nullsec's fault. Y'all didn't want CCP to add any content to your shit. You want Nullsec to be about Nullsecers. You need to do stuff with that. Okay? And people are. Here's the thing. People are. Don't listen to all this bullshit that people are saying, oh, it's so stagnant or whatever. There are people out in space. There are people doing stuff all over the place. And there's a massive spike in production that implies that people are actually doing stuff. Right? Goons move. They need to rebuild. There's people fighting in different places. There are things happening. Do not believe the propaganda from propagandists that are trying to make the situation more advantageous for them in spite of the truth. There are two kinds of people during times like this. There are those loudly complaining about changes and those quietly profiting from them. You get to decide which one of those two you are. But the point of the matter is that right now things feel pretty healthy, honestly. People are talking about, oh my God, Eve is dying. I just saw a forum post that was like, how do we stop Eve from dying? All right, well, let's look at Eve Offline. Eve Offline is a website that keeps track of the player count. And we can see if we look, since this was blackout right here, this is scarcity. So it is at near pre-blackout level, right? Not quite. I'll admit that. We're at 33,000 instead of 36,000 or whatever. But we're not that far from pre-blackout level. But here's the thing. Here's the thing about all of this, right? All of those people that you hear complaining about the fact that multi-boxing isn't valuable anymore, all those people that complained about shutting off their 20 accounts and only leaving 2 or 3 of their accounts, right? The PCU didn't go down. I mean, it went down for a while, but it's recovered. I haven't heard about people mining in 20 Roquals anymore. In fact, people are still complaining about how much of a pain in the ass it is to multi-box. People are, they've gone after botting a lot more. They've gone after multi-boxing a lot more. I know there's some people that, there are a lot of problems with bots still, but compared to 2020, compared to 2019, botting is way better than it was before. Which means, given the fact that the numbers are the same, that a lot of those bots were replaced by real people. And if you think that this replacement isn't happening, you can see down here, the number of players, new players per day, is consistent. It's been consistent for a while. Like, there's some big spikes and everything. In 2020 and 2021, there was a big spike because this was the war. But, like, the new players per day has been pretty fucking solid since the introduction of the Alpha Clone program. Like, this is the... Actually, no, this is 2010. That was even before then. Wait a minute. Yeah, here, you almost can't even see. That's so embarrassing. Anyway, the failure of the Alpha Clone program to make more people play the game, notwithstanding, we can see that our numbers have remained relatively flat stable when it comes to new players coming into the game, and now our PCUs is staying pretty solidly above 30K every day. So no, I don't buy into the hype. I don't think that mineral prices are too expensive. I think that this is just how the market works. I don't think that the EVE is dying. I don't think that people are quitting the game en masse. If anything, I've seen a lot of people join the game, and a lot of newer players are finding a home in this game. But here's the thing. A lot of new players are finding a home in the game outside of those null blocks because you no longer need those things, and null content isn't the most exciting content in the game anymore. And that's a big piece of all of this. What's PCU? Peak concurrent users. It's basically, it tracks the maximum amount of people. Well, this is showing how many people are active every day. And then so the PCU is basically, the PCU for 2024 is the most amount of people that have been logged into EVE Online in the entire year at one time, right? And that was an all-time high. We've had a yearly high of 37,000 people logged in. But every day we get to about 30 to 33,000 people. So our PCU on a daily is about 30 to 33,000 right now. It got as low as 24,000, guys. We are basically a third better than we were at our lowest point. And again, a lot of those replacements are real people, not bots, not alts, compared to before. The Great Reset just happened too. Give them time to start to escalate tensions. Boy, howdy, if Reddit is any indications, tensions are already skyrocketing within Goonswarm. There's been all kinds of drama within Goonswarm. I don't feel like covering that because I don't feel like I can cover it intelligently, but woo-wee, there's been some drama in Goonswarm. But yeah, let me know what you guys think down below or in the comments or in the chat. Am I right in my assessment? Are things not that bad? You know, there's a lot of people mad about a lot of things, and I guess my official message to you is get good scrub or explain to me why this is a real problem, because I am not convinced. It's all those Sino visuals. Oh, God. But, yeah, I think that probably wraps it up for the day. I'm sorry this is going to be a little bit of a shorter time today, but, you know, I gotta take care of the poor puppy girl. So I think that's it that's all I had today. So yeah, let me know. Do you agree? Disagree? Is there anything I missed? What? I guess the real question that I have is if what I'm saying is correct, then we don't have an absolute problem, right? We have a perception problem where resource extraction is not keeping up with production, and people are pushing narratives of a lack of resources. Is this a real problem? Is this healthy for the game? Is there a way to fix the perception and the angst? Another thing to keep in mind is it is January. January is a very it's a lackluster time. It's a time of angst. In fact, actually, for the next 3 months or so, be very mindful of the rhetoric that you see when it comes to EVE, because we are now entering into that phase that's like right before FanFest, where everybody suddenly starts complaining about how CCP never does anything and nothing ever happens and CCP doesn't communicate anything. But it's because we're building up to FanFest. And likewise, we still have a lot of stuff that seem to be coming up exciting about FanFest. We're still waiting on the Drifter attacks, and there's a lot of other teasers that hint that something is going to be coming as we build up towards FanFest and whatever's coming in the spring expansion. So, yeah, I don't know. Again, am I right? Am I wrong? Why am I wrong? If I'm wrong on any of the points today, on Pochven or mining, I would really like somebody to explain it to me in a way to change my mind. I've already shown that I can change my mind on a lot of different topics. I changed my mind about Zarzak lockouts. And hey, in this exact stream, I changed my mind about the changing of standings in Pochven. So it's not that difficult to change my mind. So if you disagree with me, I challenge you to change my mind in the comments down below. Or we could set up an interview where you can come on and make your point or make your case. I'd love to do that. But until then and until next time, I've been Ashtarothi. I've been playing this game since 2010, talking about it since 2012, and I'm here to put even to context for you, my fellow Empyreans. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Thank you for everything, sharing the videos, like, comment, subscribe. It really does help get it out there. My numbers have been down this year. I'm hoping that that YouTube isn't suppressing my videos or whatever. I know that YouTube's been changing a lot of algorithmic stuff. So just to make sure you like the stream if you actually care about it, so that way it continues to be promoted to other people, and share it with your corp mates. Let people know that there's this guy named Ashtarothi that puts out great videos. I've got over 700 videos with tips, tutorials, guides, philosophy. I just had somebody comment on one of my videos about making your own objectives, you know, because I'm here to help you guys, and I'm here to help make a better EVE Online by making a better EVE Online player base. So with all that said, you can also buy some merch like the t-shirt that I'm not wearing, or a mug, or anything else. Everything helps. Help me take care of this little puppy. She's wonderful, and I love her. But, you know, feed the guineas and all that. I'm an Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden. Until next time, I'll see you in space. One hand.
Bring on the wrecking machine.
I forgot a whole fucking point. I knew I forgot something. There's one other piece, which is the Mercoxit thing, okay? One other thing for the Mercoxit thing. I'm sorry. I forgot. Or not the Mercoxit, but the Morphite thing. So this Morphite spike, one thing to point out, guys, this is a little bit of a market trick or market tip. So we can see that it is going up, but you can mine Morphite right now and sell it. That's probably really good. But here's the thing. Do not buy into Morphite right now. Why? Because it's artificially inflated. How do I know this? If I go to here and I go to this this post, it's from 3 days ago. Apparently, one of the major sources of Morphite was not spawning correctly in the game, but this was fixed 2 days ago. So that's the other piece to pay attention to when it comes to Mercoxit and Morphite specifically. Is now is an incredibly bad time to buy it, and it may not even be a good time to invest in mining it excessively, because it is going to push back down now that it has a resource. However, since we saw the other nullsec ores going up, it's probably still going to be worthwhile. All right, that's it. Bye. Nobody's mad that I restarted the song, and everyone knows it.
Bring